When you're an actor, you have to put up with a lot of stuff beyond just learning your lines and standing in place. You've got to put up with difficult directors, difficult co-stars, and of course, difficult locations. So you may end up creating some rather strange coping methods in order to get through the shoot. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 weird ways that actors coped with difficult shoots. Number 10. Tom Hardy chokes out his director. The Revenant was a notoriously grueling shoot, tackling harsh weather conditions, spiraling budgets, and crew walkouts. Now, the director maintained that the difficult conditions enhanced the film's central theme of survival. He told New York Times that if we ended up in green screen with coffee and everybody having a good time, everybody will be happy, but most likely the film would be a piece of shit. The strains of the production clearly got to Tom Hardy, though, who ended up wrestling in the snow with his director. The pair had apparently argued over Hardy doing a particular stunt. The disagreement ended with the actor putting the director in a chokehold. Hardy says that it was an effort to relieve tensions, a light-hearted tussle between two colleagues, stating, "I'd rather be a naughty boy and release that tension." It turns out that their wrestling match was later immortalized in a sketch, emblazoned on a t-shirt and then given out to the cast and crew by Hardy. When a photo of the sketch went up on Reddit, one unverified commenter suggested that the pair's confrontation was less light-hearted than Hardy suggested in the press. Whatever the truth, though, it's certainly one way to work through those workplace tensions, but maybe don't try it in the office. Number 9. Kate Winslet's sick bag dress. Whilst a film about a romance between two landscape artists may not seem like it would require much stunt work, Kate Winslet insisted on doing her own stunts on a little chaos. One particular scene required her to fall into a weir, a small dam of cascading water. Using all of her Titanic training, she was able to give input as to the correct safety precautions and appropriate water temperature. She was keen to ensure the stunt was safe, as she also happened to be pregnant at the time. Not wanting to disclose this for fear of not being able to do her own stunts, Winslet had to come up with a plan to disguise her discomfort. While she was too early in the pregnancy for it to be physically obvious, she was dealing with a lot of nausea and morning sickness. To combat this, Winslet hid sick bags under the skirt of her dress for use in between takes when the nausea got too much to bear. She eventually did announce her pregnancy to the crew and cast, prompting the director Alan Rickman to commend her on her strength at throwing herself into the weir so willingly. Number 8. Tom Cruise grins and bears it through a stomach ulcer. Tom Cruise has done a great many crazy things in his career, climbing to the top of the 829-meter high Burj Khalifa in Dubai, hanging off of an airplane, doing a 25,000 feet halo jump, and recently hanging upside down from a biplane for Mission Impossible 8. However, his time working with Stanley Kubrick on Eyes Wide Shut was mentally rather than physically challenging. The film holds the Guinness World Record for the longest constant film shoot, clocking in at 15 months, including an unbroken shoot which lasted 46 weeks. During the filming, director Stanley Kubrick would ask Cruise and his then-wife Nicole Kidman to share their personal reservations about their marriage and shot 95 different takes of Cruise walking through a door. Cruise, a notorious overachiever, was committed to giving the legendary director exactly what he wanted, though Kubrick would often withhold exactly what it was that he wanted. Eventually, the stresses of the production gave Cruise a stomach ulcer. The actor decided not to inform his director of this ailment, fearing that it would disrupt and delay the protracted shoot even further. And at the end of the day, if you can handle Stanley Kubrick, hanging off an airplane must be a breeze. Number 7. Heather Donahue brought a big knife to the Blair Witch shoot. When aspiring actress and improv comic Heather Donahue found a casting notice in Billboard magazine for an upcoming production, she thought it was her ideal opportunity. The advert stated that the filmmakers were looking for somebody who was comfortable with improvisation and camping. You should be prepared, the notice warned, to be very uncomfortable. Donahue's friends and family were deeply concerned when they discovered that she planned to take part in the production. Faced with the prospect of her daughter trekking off into the woods with a bunch of strangers, Heather's mother requested that she get hold of everyone's social security numbers. Fearing that the whole endeavor was a snuff film, Donahue's loved ones also convinced her to take a weapon. And so it was that aspiring actor Heather Donahue turned up to the first day of shooting with what she describes as a giant knife. Whilst the shoot was fraught with dwindling food rations, tensions, and surprising stunts from the directors, no actor was harmed in the making of the Blair Witch Project. Donahue's career prospects, on the other hand, were slightly harmed by the fact that she had to pretend to be dead as part of the film's genius marketing strategy. Number 6. Arnie drinks schnapps in the jungle. Shooting Predator was quite the experience for Arnold Schwarzenegger. Over the course of the production, he had a gym shipped to Mexico, got married, and got food poisoning, requiring him to shoot one scene with an IV connected to his arm. So it's not surprising that the actor eventually hit the bottle. The schnapps that the Austrian action star drank were purely medicinal, however. Given the drastic drop in temperature in the Mexican jungle, night shoots proved particularly difficult to film. This was exacerbated by the amount of time that Schwarzenegger spent in the freezing cold waters. Not only that, but the mud that the Dutch smeared on his face was actually pottery clay, which showed up better on the cameras but also got incredibly cold and wet. As his character spent much of the film in camouflage, Arnie had to wear this uncomfortably cold clay for weeks. Whilst the production team focused heat lamps on the action star between takes, it wasn't enough to stop him from shivering. So, like all good Austrians, Schwarzenegger turned to his national drink to restore a bit of heat to his body. Number 5. Josh Brolin and Jake Gyllenhaal gave each other altitude sickness. In 2014, during filming on Everest, an avalanche struck in the mountain, killing 16 Sherpa guides. Whilst the tragedy didn't affect the production directly, it was a sobering reminder of the dangers involved. Although the production team and cast never fully ascended the mountain, they did spend a lot of time at the punishingly cold base camp. The Hollywood actors were forced to sleep in unheated lodge with electric blankets and got to experience the treacherous surroundings, albeit at a much safer distance. Jake Gyllenhaal and Josh Brolin threw themselves into preparations for the film, going mountaineering in Santa Monica and spending time in an altitude simulator. It was here that the masculine competitive urge kicked in, and both actors decided to see just how far they could push themselves, staying in the machine for longer and longer. Eventually, they got to between 26,000 and 30,000 feet, an area where Gyllenhaal says the body just does not function. Both actors regretted their game when they fell into a deep depression a few days later, suffering from altitude sickness. On the plus side, Gyllenhaal believes that the experience helped him get into the mindset of his character. Number 4. Jim Carrey's CIA training to play the Grinch. Ron Howard's Dr. Seuss's adaptation ran into difficulties very early on in its production. After spending over 8 hours being made up with green latex, spandex, and yak hair, Jim Carrey was exhausted, claustrophobic, and close to departing the film. This was a problem for Howard and his producer Brian Grazer because they'd been given the rights to How the Grinch Stole Christmas with the stipulation that the titular character be played by Carrey. Grazer then came up with a novel solution to help his star cope with the constricting costume, and that was CIA training. The producer had met a specialist who trained US agents on how to withstand torture when captured by the enemy. The CIA specialist then agreed to the gig and flew out to work with Jim Carrey over one intense weekend, where the pair locked themselves in a room together and went through various undisclosed techniques. In addition to torture training, Carrey also found that chain smoking between scenes was another great stress reliever. The only issue here was that he had to use a comically long cigarette holder in order to stop the incredibly flammable green yak hair from going up in flames. Number 3. Vin Diesel tried to get Judi Dench into Dungeons & Dragons. Sometimes the tedium of a film set can be just as taxing as the punishing cold or an uncomfortable costume. It's in these moments that actors often bond with each other, sharing stories or playing games, and sometimes strong friendships are formed between unlikely partners. One such unconventional duo was Vin Diesel and Dame Judi Dench, who worked together on The Chronicles of Riddick. Diesel has talked at length about how he courted Dame Judi by jetting off to London to see her on stage and sending her excessively large bouquets of flowers to her dressing room. His charm offensive definitely paid off, and Dench agreed to star in the Pitch Black sequel. One of the rumors from the set of the film was that Diesel, a self-confessed Dungeons & Dragons obsessive, would play Dungeon Master to his fellow cast members in order to pass the time between scenes. Sadly though, it doesn't appear that Dame Judi wanted to continue with this, as Vin Diesel later said that while she was very intrigued in the game and by the lore's mythological links, he never did convince her to actually play Dungeons & Dragons with him. Number 2. Jeff Daniels and Anna Paquin's No Geese Rule. Who could forget the heartwarming family movie Fly Away Home, in which Jeff Daniels and Anna Paquin play father and daughter who help a flock of orphaned geese fly south for the winter. When the two actors were reunited on the set of painful divorce comedy The Squid and the Whale, they quickly had to put the film out of their mind. Here Daniels plays a university professor, Bernard, who has an affair with one of his students when his marriage collapses. The student that Bernard is involved with is played by Daniels' former on-screen daughter, Anna Paquin, 9 years after they shot Fly Away Home. To get past any awkwardness during the film's more intimate scenes, the two actors had to work out a way to mentally get past their prior collaboration. Waiting to film the scene where he's caught with his hands up her shirt, Daniels attempted to deflate the tension by looking out the window and saying, "Oh look, geese." After that, the actors tried not to think about geese whilst filming together for fear of ruining the scene. And number 1, Danny DeVito's imaginary friend. Whilst they're no longer together, Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman still maintain a close relationship, which is indicative of the seemingly unbreakable bond between the pair. There were early signs of this when 4 years into their relationship, DeVito was separated from Perlman while filming One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in Oregon. Struggling to cope with being 3,000 miles away from his girlfriend, DeVito was feeling increasingly lonely. In order to combat this loneliness, DeVito invented an imaginary friend with whom he could chat with each night before he went to bed. As production wore on, DeVito's imaginary conversations continued, and he began to worry for his sanity. DeVito wasn't the only actor to struggle on the set of the Oscar-winning film, though. Fellow cast member Sidney Lassick became increasingly erratic and overwhelmed, resulting in him having to be removed from set during a scene with Jack Nicholson. Conveniently for both actors, the cast worked and slept in a functioning psychiatric ward to enhance their performances. Therefore, the hospital's superintendent, Dr. Brooks, was on hand to hear their concerns. Brooks assured DeVito that he was perfectly fine because he was still aware that the friend he was talking to was an imaginary one. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 weird ways that actors coped with difficult shoots. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Twitter at RetroJ0, or you can swing by LIVE'N'Let's Dice, where I do all of my streaming outside of work, and it'd be great to see you over there, my friends. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Sometimes we have to deal with difficult situations in our real lives, but I want you to remember that you are never, ever alone. Friends, family, professionals in the support industry, these people care about you and want you to do well, all right? So if you have a problem, please make sure that you are trying to speak to people that are close to you, because a problem shared is usually a problem solved a lot quicker. Big love to you, my friend. Treat yourself well. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.